Well, welcome everybody. For some of us, it's the evening. For others, it's other time zones today. So I want to, hi everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much. Okay. I'm really excited to have a second guest in our series, in our lecture series. And the special guest that we have tonight is part of From Farms to Incubators' new menteeship program. It's a collaboration between From Farms to Incubators and an awesome team of researchers at the University of California's Merced School of Engineering. Um, so first, a short introduction, but before I begin, just a little bit of housekeeping that's going on. This is being recorded because we're going to put together a professional video, and we're going to also be adding this to our educational archives so that various young people and future mentees can also see this really rich collection of amazing guest speakers. Um, so I'm going to start. My name is Amy Wu. I am the director from Farms to Incubators, and I'm also one of the facilitators and coordinators for the program that just launched this autumn semester. So first, a short introduction on today's topic. Week, we had a guest speaker, Gerardo Castro, who presented on pest control and innovation in ag tech. This week, our topic focuses on seed design. Ag tech includes ag bio, and a key focus of ag bio is to feed the world's growing population in a more sustainable way. And it begins with the seed. And so today we have Ponsi Trivisvavet, the head of Inari. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Inari briefly first, and then we're gonna jump right in. So one of the company's focuses here is that it's a seed design company working to solve the critical issues of the food system sustainability by unlocking the full potential of seed. Ponzi's going to talk more about that, and she'll also discuss a little bit more about what that means, and how that connects with innovation and also food production. So the focus of this talk is the path to resilience, building a sustainable food system that can provide for lifetimes to come. And I'm going to share a little bit about Ponsi, about her background. Through Ponsi's rich experience and deep expertise across the agriculture industry, she leads Inari on its journey to address food security for a growing global population, while better caring for our planet Earth and improving farmer well-being through economically sustainable solutions. Inari, as a little bit of background, was founded by Flagship Pioneering in 2016. It is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, with additional sites in West Lafayette, Indiana, and also in Ghent, Belgium. And it has a growing team, of several hundred employees working again to solve the critical issues of climate change, food security, and farmer profitability. So really excited to have her here this evening on the East Coast. A few housekeeping things before we get started. So today's talk will be in the format of a fireside chat, about 15 to 20 minutes, followed by an engaging Q&A. It is being recorded, and like I said, it'll be available as part of the menteeship program. Please have your questions at the ready, but we do prefer that you save them for after the fireside chat. I have not been able to yet have a fireplace behind me, but maybe next time. All right. Maybe next time we'll have a fireplace and we'll have a coffee table in front of us, Ponzi. Right. I am really, really happy to have Ponzi here today. I consider Ponzi a good friend. She and a big supporter of women in the field of in the growing field of agri-food tech. So we're really honored to have her here today. I'm gonna just jump in actually to the conversation a little bit. When I first connected with you about the special series, and I asked you what is the title of the presentation, well, you noted the path to resilience, building a sustainable food system that can provide for lifetimes to come. And I just thought that's such an engaging title, and I want to hear a little bit about how you came up with that title and share a little bit more about that.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much, Amy, for allowing me to be in this series. And hi, everyone. It's an important topic in a way that first, let's define the definition of the food system, right? So how we think about the food system is actually similar to how the UN food system defines it. Food system definition are actually about three things. One, of course, we need to actually address the food security challenge. And then second, it is about making sure that we grow the food sustainably. And the third is about farmers' profitability. And the third, it sounds just profitability. It is not. It is much more than that, because you're talking about the community of the farmers. You're talking about the well-being of the really, really important community. So how Inari is thinking about it is the combination of three farm food system. And the point whereby when it comes to the title, Amy, that why I came up with the definition, not came up with definition, came up with the title of resilience, because it is something that we can not just only solve the problem of today. And food system is just so critical. It arguably, you would say that it is the most important thing in our lifetime to actually solve it. When you need to solve three things at the same time, you have to think about the future. And the reality is things change along the way, whether that would be climate change, whether that would be the demand of the crops, of the food, whether that would be the supply. So how do you actually create and make this ecosystem to be more resilient to the changes? And changes is for sure will happen. So that's the notion of how I put that in. And actually, if you allow me, Amy, the other piece around it is also the resilience from us as people who work in this industry. From the aspect of it's a difficult industry, agriculture, in a way that it takes some time to deal with biology, and plants are super complex as genome, as the aspect of it itself. So to work in this industry, you're going to need to actually have resilience. You're going to need to have true north in order to push it to the next level.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's so complex, the entire system. And going back to the part about let's go back to the seed aspect as well. And today we do have a number of students as well who are very, very interested in learning more about this area, right, of ag tech. So taking a step back, what inspired the creation of the seed design technology platform, and how does it differentiate Inari from other ag bio companies, from what you understand? Yep.
So when we started off was the question was, how do you actually address the challenge of the food system? And when we look at it, we believe that if you want to address that, you have to go back to the very beginning of the value chain of the whole food system, which is about seeds, which is about genetics. But when we look at it further, the challenge becomes as the innovation has been stagnant, right? So we're talking about only 1% yield increase per year for the past 30, 40 years. When you look at it, it takes roughly 10 to 15 years to develop any seeds. When you look at it, it's really costly of $5 billion per year spending on R&D by the industry, private sector alone. When you actually combine all of this, then when you have limited innovation costing a lot, the outcome of that is the return on investment of the farmers has been going down, right? So the question that we have there about the seed design was, what if we can develop the products by 1/3 of the time, 1/10 of the cost, and can have 10x performance? And what if we can do all of this in a most nature positive way? And that was the reason why we founded Inari. So as you mentioned, it was founded by Flagship Pioneering. So how we think about it is, how do we step change the yield of the crops, but take less land, less water, and less nitrogen fertilizer? And we do that with the combination of two technology platforms. So the first one is about AI-powered predictive design, because plants are so complex. The genomes of the crops are much more complex than us as human genome, right? So wheat, I'll give you the example, is actually 6 times more complex than us in terms of genome. So how do we actually build the knowledge and know where we need to make the changes in that genome of the crop the most, right? So that's one. And after we know it, the second part of our technology platform is multiplex gene editing. Yes, it is using CRISPR, but it's not the CRISPR as we know it. CRISPR is a scissor that you cut the DNA, you let them merge back. We also do that, and we touch only the natural genes there. So when you do that, we believe that we can make the changes to the natural genomes, but we also believe that it's not only about cutting the genome there. So we can actually do the control of the gene expression. So think about it as we don't only turn off the light switch, we can actually dim the light switch, which you can mimic the nature of the crops better. And we can make changes to several genes at the same time. And that is what is unique about Inari. So when you combine these two technology together, really the knowledge about what genes that we need to go make changes, and you make changes to those natural genes, that's when we can really unlock the full potential of the step change of the seed itself.
Oh, that is really fascinating, especially when it's multiple gene editing, as you also mentioned as well. And in terms of I'm just curious, as somebody who loves to eat, what vegetables and fruits are you focused on?
We don't. For wave one, we don't. But I'm glad you asked the question. So we focus on soybean, corn, and wheat in our F1. And the rationale of that is, yes, it is true. It's 70% of the market, but more importantly, it is actually 90% of sustainability challenges. So talking about the acres that could influence the land use of the world, talking about the land use of the crops that consume the largest amount of nitrogen fertilizer in the world, which is corn, talking about the crops that consume quite large number of fungicide, so that's wheat. So how do you actually address the critical part of the food system the most? So that's where we're focusing. Of course, wave 2, wave 3, wave 4, we can always go to any crops, any geography, because the platform itself is applicable across crops, across geography.
I wanted to also have a little bit more conversation about the farmers, because when I first started to report about this, maybe back in now 2015 and 2016, a lot of the farmers, seem to kind of look at ag tech or ag bio in general and with a bit of a raised eye and say, oh, we don't have time for this, and there's a bit of suspicion and maybe doubt with it. So I'm just curious if you could elaborate a bit about the collaborative efforts, or if there are any collaborative efforts between Inari and farmers to implement the new technologies.
Yeah. So, Amy, first of all, I think that is right. The question from farmers, right? So that's why for us, we choose to focus on, I would argue that one of the most critical decision of the farmers is actually about seeds. Choosing the seeds is really, really closing to their heart. It's definitely the piece whereby farmers have to use, right? Yes, there are a lot of competition in this industry, but when you can actually create step change product, breakthrough products, it is certainly needed by the farmers. But still, the question comes with, how do you make sure that you create relationship and get the feedback from farmers as much as you can, even though our go-to-market model is not selling directly to farmers. Our customers are seed companies, okay? However, we start off our product development process with the product concept, followed by product design, followed by product development, and then going to pre-commercialization and commercialization. So we call that stage gate. That stage gate is starting with the product concept, which is starting from the commercial mindset first, that our seed customers are also farmers. Arguably, almost all of our commercial team within Inari are actually also a farmer and grew up on farm. 80 to 90% of
Oh,
our
wow.
community.
Mhm.
So a lot of them are agronomists by themselves. A lot of them actually grew up in the industry of seeds or agronomy. So you actually feed that into, okay, that's the product concept of what we try to do to address it. So you do it, and then you go back and forth with the product design, which is the science team. So you go back and forth there. So then you actually create something that you know for sure this is needed by the farmers.
That's wonderful. So there's a close connection, in terms of working with the farmers. I mean, and in terms of you, well, actually diverting a bit, you have a farm as well. Is that correct?
That's correct, correct. But for me, it's the mix of animal as well as crop. Yes, I
Right.
do have farm as
Right.
well.
That's correct. So what are some of the challenges? I mean, so you've been at Inari since what year now? I'm losing a little bit of track of.
I've been here for 6.5 years now. In the growth company or startup, it's actually really long.
So upon reflection and also looking at the present, what are some of the continued challenges that you and the company face in terms of bringing the innovation out into a greater market and use? I mean, this is really wonderful because what I'm hearing is that at the level of designing the seed, you can have more pest resilient, more basically farmer friendly seeds, which is wonderful in terms of the food production. But what are some of the challenges that continue to be there? And how do you feel? What do you see as some potential solutions if you could wave your magic wand? Yeah.
Yeah. So the challenges continue to be time. Even though we can develop the product 1/3 of the time compared to the traditional way of doing it, whether that would be traditional breeding or GMO approach, we can actually cut down the time significantly, but still, it's not fast enough given the challenge of the food system, right? The food security, the climate change, and farmer profitability there. So it still takes some time. And for us, I'll give you an example that once we have the products as seeds, the only way for us to grow more parent seeds in order to give large amount of parent seeds to our customers, which are seed companies, the only way to do it is unlike you just have the factory and produce the phone. You have to grow it under the sun in order to get to more seeds. And then once you have seeds, then you get to the next seasons, grow it for another 110 days. So that's the part of it's it's a supply that take time to build up the supply. Um, we try everything that we could. You could grow it counter season going to Southern Hemisphere, but you still can do only 2 seasons a year, and it's not meeting the demand yet. So that's continued to be a challenge. But that's the business challenge, which is okay, which is understandable. The other part of the challenge is how do you communicate the potential and the importance of your business
Mm,
in the agriculture to the people outside of agriculture,
right.
to the investors outside of agriculture there, right? So we grew up in agriculture. We understand that there's a limit to biology, certain limit, right? Like the production. I can accelerate all day long about the edit and develop new products, but I can't just do the production just like factory. So how do you actually educate those? How do you communicate those to that end? And I don't think it's a challenge, but it takes a lot of time to actually share those knowledge because it's sometimes it's counterintuitive.
Mm. I'm going to shift a bit because I know that we are going to also open up the floor to questions from the folks out there, including the students. But I'm going to take a step back and talk a little bit about yourself as well. You've been a mentor to, right, to women in the industry and to including at your company as well. There's a lot of younger people working there. So I wanted to ask you, tell us about someone that you admire and why, um, and the reasons why you admire them.
As a mentee or as a mentor?
It could be as a
One.
mentee or as a mentor.
Right. So I consider her as somebody as my role model, Pam Johnson. She was previously leading the NCGA, National Corn Grower Association, and she's a farmer. She's a corn farmer, corn soy in Iowa. She's somebody that would, no matter what, you come back and then you go back to the principle and the true north of you just wanting this industry, you just want farming to be better. She's a farmer, but she pushes herself into the the industry so much to help people to understand more on what's at stake when you're talking about the food security, when you're talking about farmer profitability, when you talk about sustainability. I'm just admiring her purpose, and just take extra time of herself. She can just do the farming on her own, several hundreds or even thousands of acres of her own farm, but she doesn't stop there, and she wants to give back to the industry. So she's somebody that I respect significantly.
She sounds amazing. She sounds like someone we would want to actually have here as well. I was also going to ask, what is one of your gifts, talents, or experiences that is helping with your work at Inari?
Um, I would say that ability to use the heart more than the brain when it comes to the most important decision. Because because most of the time, a lot of us who are in this industry are coming from either scientists, agronomists, me as education. I'm actually having engineering by background, so you're pretty logical. You're like fact-based and all sort of things, right? And sometime it's actually at some point you would argue that the it's actually needing everybody is smart equally. That's my belief. The difference that make is actually who could push and then use the true north to drive the outcome more. And when I said the brain versus the heart, is actually not the heart that you just make decision, but it is about when you know the true north of yourself, you can push it extra miles than the others. What I'm saying is being an ag tech is hard. I'm not gonna lie that is not easy because you're trying to solve several problems at the same time. You're dealing with biology, something that you can't control, something that is slow. There's timeline of that. If you're not resilient enough, and if you don't have the true north, what you're trying to do, um, it's hard sometimes to actually overcome the challenges. And for me, is the superpower is essentially around maximizing the belief of my true north to make decision.
I really love that. That's something really important to hold to is the heart and our own true north as well, our own compass. I'm going to open up our discussion to the group out there to the floor into a Q&A. And I would say that please introduce yourself today and please introduce where you are because I know that there are folks from different backgrounds and different time zones and feel free to ask their question now. And you're going to have to unmute yourself, just as a reminder. I know that I see Savio. Yep.
Yeah, so I guess I'll ask the first question. My name is Savio. I'm a student at UC Merced. I am currently in computer science, so I was a little bit intrigued when you were talking about the technological aspects of Inari, and basically, I'd like to ask about how AI plays a role in seed design and how it's playing even greater role in the innovation compared to like the past, how it's doing now, because a lot of innovation within AI has come in the recent years. So how has this affected innovation at Inari in general and across, I guess, your field within ag tech? I mean, without getting into any confidential technologies.
Certainly, Savio, thank you for the question there. If I could give example a little bit more when I mentioned AI powered predictive design to help us discover the genes, I'll give you example that human has roughly around 20,000 genes, and we have the knowledge, almost all of them, almost 20,000 genes. And the rationale of that is the agenda of most of the governments. So you have the investment around it, right? So I'll give you example. Soybeans. Soybeans have 50,000 genes. So I just invite you for you to guess how much of the knowledge that we have had out of those 50,000 genes that we describe and we know what those genes are about. Just guess.
I would put my guess around 5,000.
50.
We know all
Okay.
50?
We describe that interest in literature that how many genes, actually 50 that are related to yield. Total, we know 200. That's it. That's it. Okay. That's when it comes to plant. So now you started to see that where AI could come into the play, right? So we know that it's more complex than human. We know that when you make the change in one gene, it will affect other genes as well. So in order to actually go in and then identify what are the genes that we need to make the changes, and oops, we have the knowledge of only 200 genes and only 50 out of 200 are related to you. That's it, right? So then the question becomes as, how am I going to actually understand the rest of these 49,900 and so on, right? How they gonna get to understand the rest of those, and just to go about mapping the genome and understand it via normal approach, it would take you like several tens of years. How does it come into play in terms of having the data in a way that you can actually sort things out, having to predict that these genes are related to that genes and all sort of things. That's essentially what we're using at Inari. Of course, we use AI in other things as well with the automation, but this part of discovering the genes is something that we are using them the most.
Yeah, sounds cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Anna Grace, there's another question.
Hi, my name is Anna Grace Alvarado. I'm also at UC Merced. This is a super, well, first, thank you for being here. This is a super interesting topic to discuss. I was wondering how Inari looks at kind of like assessing long-term environmental impacts of gene-edited crops, mainly in terms of like biodiversity or like soil health. I feel like a moment where our food system took a big hit was during the pandemic, and a lot of that was because of the bottlenecking of all of our food systems kind of having this like single track. I was wondering if you'd be able to speak on that.
Yeah, thank you, Anna Grace, for the question there. If I could go back a little bit, what's the definition of gene editing versus GMO? Gene editing is about making the changes to natural genes, and then there's no cross species. GMO is about inserting foreign gene like bacteria into the plant. So what we are doing here, all the things that we are doing can happen by nature, right? But we just don't have 20 years, 100 years, 200 years, 300 years to wait for us to solve the problem of food security and the climate change and farmer profitability. That's essentially where it comes from. So that's one thing to address part of your question. The second thing about this is the tools whereby it allows us to make changes to the crops in a precise way. The traditional breeding, if we go back to the genetic diversity 200 years ago, and then you map to the genetics of a crop today, of corn today. Actually, in fact, we would see that the diversity of the genetic pool right now is actually much less than 200 years ago. So what we're trying to do here is, how do we create the diversity as much as we can, right? Because along the way of breeding those crops, for example, you try to get to the yield with the traditional way of doing it, you lost some of the genes, whether that would be drought tolerance, or whether that would be disease tolerance, you lose it along the way. So having these two to actually bring those genetic diversity back is actually really healthy for the crop, in that sense.
Okay, thank you for the
Thank you.
clarification.
That
Could
was
I
helpful.
ask a follow-up question?
Yes, absolutely.
Part of that lack of diversity that we now have, I would assume, is kind of from companies like Monsanto and them really holding specific seeds and not allowing for a lot of, I don't know if that's like then like crossbreeding. Is there something you guys do working with like smaller farmers and ensuring that they don't then become reliant on these types of seeds and then can explore more of the mixing of different plants? Does that make sense?
So what we try to do is, we try to create new diversities as much as we can. Then it depends on the law of the land, that majority of the countries essentially would actually need to respect certain patterns, need to respect certain ability to cross the crops there, to breed from there. So it depends on the country. But what Inari would do is, we always respect the law of each land.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Tom?
Hi, Ponsi. I'm Tom Harmon. I'm a professor here at UC Merced. I'm an environmental engineer, but I like to think about sustainable ag questions. And something you mentioned caught my attention, and it took me back to the very disruptive tomato invention in California, where some very clever agricultural engineers came up with a fantastic machine to harvest tomatoes, but it wouldn't quite work unless the people on the plant side, science side, also modified the tomato so that it was a little tougher and it could handle getting roughed up a little bit by the harvester, right? But at the same time, a lot of us still lament the fact that now we don't have very tasty tomatoes in the supermarket, right? So you were saying, when you modify one gene or two genes, there are other effects. And how do you or Inari take an approach to sort of keep your eye on the ball in many different dimensions to the extent you can in these types of problems?
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. So that's very important for us. The part that we design, I'll get into the technical a little bit, if you don't mind. First of all, we design first that what we want to make the changes, and it's not only about the CRISPR-Cas, the scissor. We design the guide, like the GPS as well, to go into the proper place that we want to go in. So after we do that, we sequence it, that exactly what we intend to do. Then we go into, before we go into that's right after the lab, we sequence it before we send it to the greenhouse. And once we have in the greenhouse, we sequence it again. And then we go to the field. From the field, we sequence back again. So we always check those And even though for us, for example, in soybeans, we try to increase the yield, we don't only measure the yield. We also measure the composition of the crop back and see whether it changes at all in terms of the oil content, in terms of the protein content. And to date, we actually can maintain all of those aspects of the composition of the crops. So it's the responsibility of the companies that we need to make sure that we create only the intentional effect there. But I want to address technical part about the flavor of tomato a little bit, or the color, or sometimes you want to do those. Actually, in fact, the trait like color or sometimes the level of sugar is actually more straightforward than the yield. Usually, it involves only one gene. So that's actually arguably easier than yield.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a question from Savio.
Yeah, so just another quick question. So how do you see career opportunities in ag tech opening up so far in your field, I guess? Because you did mention AI and genetically modifying these seeds. So me personally, as a computer science major, I focus on the field of AI. So let's say what career opportunities are there at Inari, other companies, and what areas are they in?
Yeah, I think Xavier, the ag tech continues to grow as an industry, and there's still a need, right? In terms of how do you get into, I go back to addressing the food system again. For us, for example, we continue to grow, and people sometimes miss it that you only have to study agriculture in order to come to agriculture. I'll give you example that no, in the case of our scientists, actually, in fact, 1/3 from our scientists came from ag, 1/3 came from academia, and purposely 1/3 came from different industry, purposely, whether that would be from pharma, whether physicist, whether chemist, and that's when you get the real innovation. So coming into play here as well, our team in the data AI team, I would argue that less than 10% of the whole group of the team have ag background. And we actually want the people who come from other industry that have a specific skill on the AI, on the data itself. That's something that is really important. So to answer your questions, AI, data, management are really, really critical part on unlocking the potential of agriculture as well.
Thank you, Ponsi, for sharing your outlook on that career opportunities. Laurel?
Ponsi, my name is Laurel. I'm one of the mentees and I've been working with Amy. So I'm a part of the From Farms to Incubator side of this project, and I work more on the communication ends of things with Amy. So it's been really interesting hearing everything about like the agriculture from the creation of the biology of things with you and the company to where you're at now. One of the things that you mentioned earlier was being a problem solver, and that made me think of, well, like the whole business is solving our issues, some of them. So I was wondering if you have a method, not to say it in that phrase, method to the madness of problem solving, but if you have a specific method or procedure for problem solving in terms of for outcomes for your business. Like you mentioned earlier, there were things with patents and stuff that were like issues for you before. So I was wondering how you passed challenges that came along your way using your problem solving skills.
This is the new skill that I learned, Laura. Thanks for asking. Actually, in my early part of my career, when I try to solve the problem, I start with what, and then the middle part of my career was how I solved the problem. And I just realized now, having been at Inari, the first question that I ask first when I have a problem is who. And it's actually amazing. The best way to solve the problem is to ask that question first and have the right people in the room. Because you always have answers, but whether you have the right people in the room to solve that, I'm not answering you more sort of like specific problem solving, but I would love to share that. And it's super powerful when you started to do it. It's counterintuitive if you are a problem solver. But when you started to practice for a couple of years, you would see that it's actually amazing. So I ask question first, whom I should reach out to actually be in the team of problem solving things together. Because what we're trying to do at Inari, you would argue that nobody has done it before. So you don't really know whether you're right or wrong until you actually go and implement it. And what we're doing is actually counterintuitive from what I grew up. Where I grew up, I was trying to actually do 99% right, and then I run. Or the best, you would do 80-20 rule, right? Kind of look about it. But here, actually, the best strategy is strategy that you implement it very soon. Right? Because then otherwise you have like 80-20, but you take like so much time to get to that. Sometimes it has to be 60-40, but you run and you know what's the result is. And then to solve that it quickly, you got to have the right people in the room.
Thank you. Well, I have one more question, especially as the 24 years evaporating, and we're soon moving into 2025. What are a couple of key maybe goals or dreams do you have for, I'm talking about the dreaming phase, maybe a little bit more for 2025 for Inari, and maybe even beyond 2025, and why?
I'll do it much longer, Amy, on Dream. So I would love that for Inari, we would reach the true north of the company is to be a true seed design company that we can design the seeds for any crop, any geography, any square foot of the land on this earth. And that would be the dream for me, that you can get to, you have prescription medicine, right? Can you get into the point whereby you can prescribe the seeds that fit in any square foot, any square acre of the farmland on this earth? And that would be the dream of Inari, to design the seeds for that purpose.
I am looking at the group out here into our audience, our virtual audience, and I do see another question from Tom. Tom?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. So, Ponsi, I like to look farther in the future about what the future of farm work looks like. And from your perspective, do you see farmers as part of your, say, seed supply chain, and what you mentioned, that it has to go through the real plant eventually to mass produce it, and would a place like California, where we have 280 days of sunshine and lots of land, be a good place for that to happen?
Thank you, Tom. So we actually are quite rigid in terms of our business model. We are super agile when it comes to technology and seed development. So what I meant by that is we define ourselves to be a seed design company. And as I shared earlier, that the end game, we would love to do personalized seeds, right? However, the piece that we won't cross the swim lane is our customers. So our customers continue to be seed companies, not farmers. we do not intend to compete with our customers. So as soon as we took the swim lane of selling the seeds and compete with our customers to the farmers as well. That's when we think that it's not the best place to compete with our customers. And also, as Inari, we grew up as a science company, as a technology company, as developing the novel parent seeds, and we would like to stay in that swim lane. And what we believe, Tom, is it's just so easy for anyone in a startup, in a growth company, that you want to control everything in order to go as fast as you can. Sometimes I have to hold myself back as well and just make sure that we're pretty disciplined on where is our swim lane there. It is hard, actually. In fact, one thing that is really hard running the growth company is to make sure that we focus on what we need to do, but don't focus too fast. Because if you focus too fast, you limit your optionality as well. So it's something that you have to push that. For example, technology, never limit yourself, but customer, let's limit yourself that you don't compete with them.
Right. Great answer.
Thank you very much. We are actually, time flies when you're having fun. We are actually running out of time. And we've had some amazing questions in. I think, thank you, Ponsi, again, for sharing your story, your insight, your knowledge. All of this is extremely rich information. So I'm going to turn the floor back to you. It does say spotlight. I have a spotlight sign now pointing at me from Zoom. You want to share some final words about especially as we kind of close the year, and any final words of maybe advice as well to young people?
So I have two asks. Coming here is one thing that actually keep me going, but I have two asks for everyone on this call. Number one is we're going to need to help each other. There won't be able to be just only public sector or private sector or one company to solve the food system challenge. We need to work together as an ecosystem. The ask for you is, no matter what you do in the future, let's make sure that you don't only work for a company, but you work for the whole ecosystem. Amy is a great example of the person that bring the ecosystem together. And that would be part of the success of what we need to solve with the most difficult subject on earth, which is about food system there. That would be one ask. Think about ecosystem all the time. The second one is, if you have time, the quiet time, might be good to reflect on yourself, on what's really your true north. And it is really important to know that, because no matter what you do in your career, the reality is there are going to be challenges along the way. And the question won't be whether you're going to fail or not. You will. The question would be, how fast can you get up? How quickly can you get back up? And when you have true north and you work on the areas that are related to your true north, you're going to get back up within 1 second. And that's going to be the differentiation between winner and the people who would actually not hitting there yet. So that would be my ask. That might be good for you to search for your true north.
Thank you so much. I'm always inspired to hear you speak. And thank you for highlighting and bolding the true north. Each of us kind of search within ourselves to why we are passionate about something and to continue moving forth, right? In our own swim lanes. So I want to really thank Ponsi for your time today. You've been very gracious. And if you want to actually read more, you meaning the audience want to read a little bit more about her story and her personal story as well in bio, her story is also in the book From Farms to Incubators as well. And I want to thank everybody out in the audience today for the really insightful questions. And then we will continue with our guest speaker series next week. And thank you very much. Have good evening or good afternoon or good morning.
Thanks so much, everyone. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.